Give our viewers the details on what you mentioned just a minute ago, which is the messages that law enforcement say were on the suspect's murder weapon.
Right. So apparently when they found that weapon just in the woods, just in this neighborhood behind the campus in the direction that the suspect fled, they found engravings on the ammunition and the rifle, and I believe we have a soundbite that we can play describing what those engravings were. Take a listen.
Investigators noted inscriptions that had been engraved on casings found with the rifle. Inscriptions on a fired casing read, "Notices, bulges, capital OWO, what's this, question mark." Inscriptions on the 3 unfired casings read, "Hey fascist, exclamation point, catch, exclamation point." Up arrow symbol, right arrow and symbol, and 3 down arrow symbols. A second unfired casing read, "Oh Bella Ciao, Bella Ciao, Bella Ciao, Ciao Ciao." And a third unfired casing read, "If you read this, you are gay, LMAO.
So, O Bella Ciao, that is a song glorifying the partisans who fought against the fascists and the occupying Nazis in Italy during the Second World War. And later, when the governor was asked about a motive, he said, well, maybe you don't need to look any further than those words, "Hey, fascist, catch." Dana?
I mean, just so chilling, all of it. Nick, thank you so much for being there and your terrific reporting. I want to turn now to former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe and criminologist Casey Jordan. Thank you both for being here. Andy, let's start with you. Law enforcement clearly has a lot more answers. We heard it this morning, but there are still questions. What are your questions right now?
Yeah, so we have so much more to work with now as a result of the press conference. Law enforcement will have an infinitely greater amount of details as this day goes on and we roll into tomorrow, because what they're doing right now undoubtedly are executing search warrants at locations relevant to this person, the shooter. At his home, likely on his vehicle, and then the kind of non-physical search warrants on his Discord channel, search warrants on any other social media he has, on any electronic devices that they're able to seize from the physical places that they've searched. So they're going to get a lot more information about really what was in his head, what his thoughts were, what his motivation might have been. One of the biggest questions that I have now, Dana, is from this remarkable exchange that they got when investigators interacted with his roommate last night. And his roommate was able to show those Discord chats by showing the investigators his own phone, and they took photographs of those chats from the phone. And the chats are remarkable to me, because the idea that an assassin who has gone to this level of planning, who's traveled over 100 miles from his own home to execute this crime, who thought through showing up in one set of clothes, changing his clothes to commit the crime, and then changing back to try to escape. And then a big piece of that escape was dropping the rifle in an area, possibly dismantling it, but also wrapping it in a towel so he could go back and retrieve it later. Apparently, he shared that part of his plan with his roommate. The chats refer to the location of the rifle, the fact that it's wrapped in a towel, the fact that he was basically surveilling the location for a safe time when he could go back in and retrieve it. So that raises the very considerable question of how much did this roommate know? Why was he included in this part of the plan? Did he understand that there was an assassination involved here? If so, was he of any assistance to that plan? So even though the governor said that they don't currently have a plan to make any other arrests, I think that's a situation that could very well change as time goes on.
No, that's interesting. I perked up when I heard him answer that question about other arrests, clearly potentially suggesting the roommate. Casey, let's talk a little bit more about the bit of information that we have now about Tyler Robinson, his behavior, which law enforcement was told that he has become more political in recent years, and specifically had conversations with his family about Kirk, quote, spreading hate. What do the new details tell you about the alleged shooter's motive?
Well, to be honest, there's so much we don't know that we really do want to know as we repiece what's been going on in his life in the last few years. I wouldn't say he's been so much become more political as he's become more politicized, perhaps. And usually you see this happen in the lives of young people who don't have enough purpose in their lives. And he did not attend that particular university based on what I've read. He just had one semester at the State University 4 years ago, like did the freshman year semester and, didn't go back. So what has been happening in the last 4 years? Does he have a job? Was he living at home and then got his own place? Where does he live with this roommate? Did he have a girlfriend? Did he have any purpose in his life? When you don't have purpose, kind of like idle hands are the devil's play shop, an idle mind is ripe for the picking for radicalization or politicization. And it just looks like he was spending all of his time online reading things and buying into things that gave him a sense of purpose and power. Because really, this was just a power move, probably more personal than political, to make himself feel powerful. He really didn't have a good escape or exit plan. So he didn't think beyond the act. And that tells us a lot about his lack of maturity.
I want to drill down on that point that you just made about the fact that he clearly lived on the internet. And Andy, what law enforcement officials said, and the governor himself said, is that these bullet casings, explain the bullet casings, and to people who don't live on the internet, several of the markings were specifically memes or sort of ideas that are found in internet culture. And we cannot, I think, drill down on this enough, how much this is potentially playing into not just this horrible tragedy, but society.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so I'm dating myself a little bit here, but when I was running the counterterrorism division in the FBI, we were confronted with this awful tidal wave of radicalization as ISIS kind of came to prominence in Syria and Iraq. We started looking, trying to identify those key radicalizers that had an impact on people who we had arrested and convicted for terrorism offenses or offenses related to terrorism. And we had a laundry list of all kinds of environmental and historical biological factors. And there was only one that was absolutely consistent among all of our convicted terrorists or terrorist associates, and that was the consumption of online propaganda. And this was, of course, earlier days, and online propaganda started with AQAP, with Inspire magazine, and then ultimately ISIS elevated the game. They were producing like videos of beheadings and things. And what we realized from that was the consumption of that propaganda, which we know on social media is actually targeted to you based on its outrageous content, because the people who put social media and the internet, they understand that people react more strongly with content that they find to be objectionable or outrageous or what have you. So whether at this point today, whether you are you lean politically right or left, you are drawn to by the way the social media is set up, content that is more likely to push you in a radical direction. And I think this is not just internet culture now. It is our culture. The internet is ubiquitous. Particularly young people are on it. It is their means of communication. It's their means of community and interacting with their friends. So, I mean, we should be prepared to see a lot more of this.
And real quick, Casey, we're pretty much out of time, but I do want to pick up on that because this suspect is 22-year-old male. And if you look at so many of the people who are convicted of crimes or even accused of committing crimes that are of this ilk, they are young men who perhaps are also, among many other things, part of the epidemic of loneliness.
Right. And we do see that as a common thread. They are rudderless. They feel isolated. They feel disenchanted. They feel like they were sold a bill of goods that if they were bright and studied and, try to get a job, that the world would be handed to them. And then they find out that it's just not true. They look for someone to blame, someone to scapegoat. And in this particular case, I think this young man was radicalized and picked a scapegoat named Charlie Kirk. I just think we'll learn more, but I don't think he's even seeking fame and fortune. He just wanted a moment of power over somebody's destiny.
Just so tragic. There's just no other way to say it. Thanks to you both for your expertise.